Well, hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for September 10th, 2024, 9/10/24. Presidential Debate Day in the U.S. of A. First, it is also World Suicide Prevention Day, established in 2003 by the World Health Organization and the International Association for Suicide Prevention as a day to focus on prevention efforts and raise awareness. President Biden issued a World Suicide Prevention Day proclamation noting that nearly 50,000 Americans died by suicide last year and that the suicide rate for our veterans is 50% higher than for anyone else. If you know someone that you think may be struggling, today is the day to reach out, ask questions, offer your help, or if you yourself are having problems, reach out to a family member, a friend, or a hotline. There's a lot of resources out there. At the White House, President Biden is welcoming the University of South Carolina NCAA women's basketball champions and the men's champion UConn Huskies this afternoon. Remember that there is something else really important happening in Washington today, so make sure you listen to the end. I'll explain it all in a bit, but first, the day we have all been waiting for has finally arrived. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Harris will square off in Philadelphia, 9 o'clock Eastern tonight. More from Rob Schmitt.
Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. It is looking like tomorrow night's presidential debate will be a one-off for this election. Kamala Harris has been ignoring NBC, the network hoping to hold a second debate in October. But of course, with Kamala avoiding all media scrutiny, there's a good chance tomorrow is the only debate we're going to see before an incredibly consequential election in this country. We're finally starting to see, though, the pitfalls of this very feeble and non-transparent shot at the White House by Kamala Harris, a campaign built on vibes and positivity, along with stealing a few policies from her opponent, has left Kamala now trailing nationally, according to the latest New York Times Siena poll. Remember, this is a left-leaning poll. Trump is up by a point, again, nationally, which would indicate a pretty decisive win electorally if this comes to fruition. Now, a reminder, this same poll had Hillary Clinton up 2 points back in September of 2016, had Joe Biden up 8 points in September of 2020, in an election, as we know, he would just barely eke out. The state of Pennsylvania is the most critical of all for Kamala Harris. Last week, we reported that her running mate, Tim Walz, arrived in the Keystone State to very little enthusiasm. They couldn't really find anybody to even engage with. So over the weekend, Kamala decided to show up in Pennsylvania because pretty much this election runs through Pennsylvania for her. And what we saw was Kamala forced to retreat to one of the most rabidly left-wing businesses in the entire state to find some kind of support. Here was Kamala Harris at Penzeys Spices in Pittsburgh.
Oh, come here. What is that about? What is that about? I think you understand. I'm pretty sure you know. Oh, it's going to be good. We're going to be good. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We are all in this together.
Yes, we are.
We're going to be fine.
We are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Thank you so much.
Did you get some spices today?
Oh, absolutely.
You did? Oh. It's all good. It's all good. We're standing strong.
A crying, middle-aged, white liberal woman. That is Kamala Harris's brainwashed bread and butter. Mortified that Trump might return, cut taxes, end a couple wars, and be annoying. How will she survive? Kamala hanging out at Penzeys is similar to a campaign stop she made in New Hampshire last week, shoring up support that she should already have. This spice shop is rabidly left-wing. On its website homepage, an entire rant about how evil and racist Republicans are. It's basically a left-wing Democrats-only spice shop. We're less than 60 days away from the election, and Kamala is hanging out in safe spaces. Not a good sign. And as she desperately casts herself as a breath of fresh air in politics, her campaign is struggling to deal with some bad news from ABC News. No interruptions during tomorrow night's debate. From Politico, Kamala Harris had planned to object, fact check, and directly question Trump. But now, with rules just finalized to mute the candidates when their opponents speak, Harris advisors are scrambling to rewrite their playbook. It's maybe the first piece of bad news Kamala has ever gotten from ABC. Media Research Center revealing the network hosting tomorrow night's debate has given Kamala Harris 100% positive news coverage since her coronation. Now, on the flip side, for Trump, it's been 93% negative. So it's 100% positive for Harris. It's been 7% positive for Donald Trump at ABC News.
That's Rob Schmitt, and tonight will actually be the very first time that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris meet. They have never met before as Trump skipped the 2021 inauguration. The former president has been in 6 previous presidential debates. Harris has the one previous vice presidential debate against Mike Pence under her belt with no major policies to argue. Experts are expecting the vice president to focus on Trump's legal issues, his felony conviction, and January 6th, among other things. Trump's aides say he will be going after Harris or tying Harris to the disasters of the Biden-Harris administration: inflation, energy, immigration, and the 2 wars that are currently going on. Donald Trump's deputy communications director, Caroline Sunshine, spoke about it with Newsmax.
Politico reporting Harris is allegedly upset, even still, over the debate rules. And here's this. A national Democratic strategist saying, quote, she could get thrown off by the muted mic. So putting their frustration about the mics out there, they're preparing for that possibility. So essentially bringing it to light. Why do you believe these rules, which were set in place when Biden was the presumptive nominee moving forward, and obviously the incumbent, but why is there still issues over muted mics for this debate, do you think?
There's no issue on our end. All of that's coming from Kamala Harris and her camp. And by the way, this is a woman where if she can't handle the rules of a debate, how is she going to sit down and handle negotiating with people like Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin? Kamala Harris has a record that she is running from. As I said, she has been the incumbent for the last 3.5 years. Her day one was 3.5 years ago. She has a bad record. It's one that she's running from. She cast the tie-breaking vote that has caused a once-in-a-generation inflation crisis. The hands and the blood of 13 U.S. service members who died during that disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan are on her shoulders because she was the last person in the room when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were withdrawing our country from Afghanistan. That same decision invited the chaos and war that we see on the world stage now, where Vladimir Putin did, in fact, invade Ukraine. And now we have the world being closer to the brink of World War III than it's ever been. And of course, Kamala Harris's failures at the border, where you could quite literally go down and visit the border today, which Kamala Harris has yet to do. And you can see the border wall that President Trump constructed during his 4 years in office, and you can quite literally see the pieces of empty border wall that Kamala Harris has allowed to just lay there, as she has allowed violent, criminal, illegal immigrants to come in, kill and rape our women and children. That is Kamala Harris's record, and it's one that she's running from.
And now we're hearing that she wants to enforce strict border policies, which is something that obviously could be in place right now. It is the Biden-Harris administration. But I wanted to ask you, Caroline, because it's obvious some of these differences in policies over the years. She has flip-flopped on a number of issues. Senator Bernie Sanders was asked about it this weekend. Here's how he defended her progressive record.
I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
Well, let me just ask you then, big picture, do you still consider Vice President Kamala Harris to be progressive, Senator?
I do. Look, she is not where I am.
So, Caroline, what should voters take away from that description?
Well, it's not so much that Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on her positions. It's that Kamala Harris is a fraud. She's like every other career politician who's never held a private sector job in their lives. She just tells you what you think, what she thinks you want to hear. She's not a flip-flopper. She is a fraud. Kamala Harris has said she wants to ban fracking. You can absolutely make good on the fact that that is exactly what she would do to someplace like the great state of Pennsylvania. You look at her record on the border, Kamala Harris has allowed upwards of 20 million illegal immigrants into this country under Joe Biden being his vice president, but she would allow 40 million more into this country. She's a radical liberal. I always say you can take the woman out of San Francisco. You can't take San Francisco out of the woman. She said it in her own words in that very short-lived 16-minute interview she did on CNN. She said her values haven't changed. Well, to be very clear, Kamala Harris's values read like a wish list for MS-13 gang members, criminals, and Greta Thunberg. That is exactly who she is, and that is who she is going to be on that debate stage. And President Trump is not going to let her hide from her personality, from her persona, or her record.
Team Trump Deputy Communications Director Caroline Sunshine on National Report with Sean Kreisman and Emma Reckenberg. And this is just me saying this. Donald Trump must remain calm and cordial, or the left and the media will blow it all up and use any little bit they can against him in any way possible. And as for Harris, now, more than 50 days after President Biden endorsed as vice president for president, she finally has some policies on her website. Newsmax host Carl Higbie has more.
Kamala Harris has finally bullied into putting a policies page, and it's pretty much as bad as you think it is. Let's do this. They finally did it on a weekend right before their first presidential debate. Kamala Harris finally puts her policies on her website. New way forward. 4 years. You have been in the White House. Why doesn't she just walk into work one day, assuming she actually goes to work anymore, and do it now? Why do you need it on a website? It's unbelievable to me. Let's go policy by policy to see what she stole from Donald Trump and what she's been saying her whole career and what she's just basically lying about. And how do you know she's lying? Because even Bernie Sanders called her out for it.
These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
To basically say anything to get elected. Weird. I've been saying this ever since she ripped off Trump's no tax on tips policy. On her issues page, folks, things like tax cuts for the middle class. That's in her first item. Yet, in the same breath, she says she's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts, which, wait for it, gave tax cuts to the middle class. They also said that no one under 400K will endure new taxes, except that they have every year under the Biden administration. There have been more and more taxes, and that doesn't even include the inflation at 20-something% we've had to endure. And their policy all hinges on demonizing the rich again, which is weird because there's not a single mention of Joe Biden's rich son who withdrew $1 million from ATMs for drugs and strippers. No media outrage over him not paying any taxes, to which he pled guilty for just last week. Which, by the way, he didn't even pay it. A wealthy donor paid the IRS fine for him. Nothing out of Hunter Biden's pocket. You see why I don't take any of these people seriously? Here's another good one. Make rent and home ownership more affordable. It sounds great, but vowing to provide first-time homebuyers with a $25,000 down payment, also forcing banks to make riskier loans. Hello, 2008, it called, and it wants its policy back. Another one, grow small business. Okay. This woman couldn't grow a cactus in her bathroom that requires watering like twice a year. And she thinks she could help grow business? Forget about it. She has literally never created a single job in the private sector. And all she talks about is increasing taxes on corporations that forces them to send their jobs overseas. She calls it her opportunity economic agenda, with an ambitious goal of 25 million new business applications by the end of her first term. From who? Which is weird, considering it was her party that shut them all down during COVID and then drove them out of business, and whoever was left drove them out of the country. Good luck bringing those back. See how the labor participation rate also now is lower than it was under Trump. Oh, and this take down bad actors and bring down costs. Another one, placid niceties that don't mean anything. She says, as president, she will direct her administration to crack down on anti-competitive practices that let big corporations jack up prices and undermine the competition that allows all businesses to thrive while keeping prices low for consumers. In other words, price controls, which are not anti-competitive practices at all. In fact, they are the complete opposite, which will only allow big box stores to prevail. And every time, not sometimes, but every single time when these price controls are implemented, they raise costs for everyone.
That's Carl Higbie, host of Frontline on Newsmax, 5 o'clock Eastern. Something Donald Trump is definitely going to bring up in tonight's debate is the deadly botched Biden-Harris pullout of Afghanistan, of course. Yesterday, the House Foreign Affairs Committee released a 350-page report based on evidence and interviews suggesting President Biden ignored warnings from senior military officials and NATO allies to evacuate U.S. service members. Chris Salcedo spoke about it with Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who we have not heard from a little bit on the Newsmax Daily. Always great commentary from Senator Cruz.
Let me expand on some of the suffering you were just talking about. A scathing report on Joe Biden's botched Afghanistan withdrawal, and Kamala Harris's, because she was the last one in the room, as you know. It reveals Biden was hell-bent on leaving Afghanistan, ignoring military advice and NATO's objections. It also revealed that the State Department, I should say, failed to have an evacuation plan, despite knowing Afghanistan would fall to the terrorist Taliban. Americans died and were left behind in the worst foreign policy defeat for the United States in the modern era. Senator, when will anybody be held accountable for that?
It's not going to happen as long as Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are in charge of the executive. It's not going to happen as long as Chuck Schumer is the Senate Majority Leader, because the Democrats don't want any accountability. Look, I think we should have had multiple hearings over the disaster, the catastrophe that was the withdrawal from Afghanistan. It led to the deaths, to the murders of 13 servicemen and women because of the incompetence and the political ideology of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And yet in the Senate, Democrats control every committee. They don't want to have hearings. They don't want to have accountability. Nobody resigned. Nobody was fired. Nobody took responsibility. And in fact, the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden White House says that it was a tremendous success. All of us saw the images of planes taking off, people desperately grabbing at the wheels. We saw Americans killed. We saw Afghans killed. We saw absolute catastrophe. Why? Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris put partisan politics above everything else. Because Biden wanted to announce that he was out of Afghanistan on the anniversary of September 11th. And even though the military said, look, you can't do an evacuation if you give up Bagram Airfield. Bagram Airfield is a secure airfield. If we're going to do an evacuation, let's do it where we can keep people safe. And the Biden-Harris White House said, no, politics is more important. Hand over the airfield. And so instead they did the evacuation from Kabul International Airport, which is in a dense urban environment. It is why 13 servicemen and women were murdered because of the catastrophic mistakes Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made.
Right, and leaving thousands of American citizens and vetted Afghan allies behind in the process.
That's Chris Salcedo, host of The Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax with Texas Senator Ted Cruz. The most important thing that is happening today, even bigger than tonight's debate, is a congressional gold medal ceremony honoring the 13 U.S. service members killed during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. The ceremony is taking place today inside the Capitol Rotunda. It will be attended by House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Hakeem Jeffries, and others, as well as the families of the 13 service members. You know who won't be there? Either of the two responsible. Joe Biden, as I mentioned, is hosting college basketball teams at the White House, while this will be going on at the Capitol Rotunda. And the vice president is in Philadelphia, of course, for the debate. There is no mention of the president attending the ceremony on the White House calendar. I'm sure the 13 families are happy about that, but wouldn't it be presidential for the president to attend that ceremony? And if you've been paying attention over the last few days, you've seen and heard all about the illegal Haitian immigrants taking over Springfield, Ohio. killing the ducks for food. Cats are missing. They're vandalizing the town, right? You've been seeing this on social media. You've been hearing about it. California Rep. Maxine Waters, who at this point shouldn't even be in Congress anymore after some of her charades, says people are complaining because Haitians are black.
Well, let me just say this, that Haitians have been the victims of, not only our country, but Canada and France for years, historically. They're black, they're poor. It's the poorest country in the hemisphere. They have been exploited, and it continues all the time. They are not, it does not appear that they are seen in the same way that they see others. Haitians have been the victims because they were the first country to fight off, the repression of France. And, of course, France have made them pay a big price for it. Yes, I think they're treated differently because they're black, because they're Haitians, and because traditionally they have not been treated as human beings.
So that's the troublemaking California Congresswoman Maxine Waters on MSNBC. And here is a black Springfield, Ohio resident at the city council meeting.
I think it's kind of odd that a guy like me has to come out from doing what I do on a daily basis to have fun, because I see what's going on in these streets, and I see you guys just sitting up there in them comfy chairs and suits, and I'm getting out here every day and I'm broadcasting this, and you guys are just sitting up there in suits or something. I really challenge you guys to get out here and do something. These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They're running into, they flipping cars in the middle of the street. And I don't know how, y'all can be comfortable with this. I don't know, who's getting paid from this. I honestly feel like someone's getting paid from it in the background. You got a bunch of people on a bus getting dropped off at a gas station to come down here. I know a single mom that FaceTimed me this morning at the welfare office that really need something. And it's nothing but immigrants over there. And I don't even want to seem like I'm coming down on the immigrants, because it's the people that's bringing them down here. Because wherever they're at, that's what they're used to, bro. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them.
So there you go. Springfield, Ohio, Aurora, Colorado, Colorado Springs. These are relatively small towns. Never mind what's happening in the big cities. It has been a heck of a few months, right? And it is going to be a heck of a next few days after the debate. Is Kamala going to crack, or is she somehow going to stump Trump? I anticipate the vice president's debate performance is going to be significantly better than President Biden's, but that is still a very low bar. Or Donald Trump may just bury her in the debate and put an end to her Cinderella run. And as we always say, the whole world is watching, which is not hyperbole. And even the media in other countries that's following the race is making fun of how the media here covers Donald Trump. This is from Sky News Australia talking about tonight's debate.
I don't think she'll use that technique, but I bet they've come up with a new one that's equally irritating and equally designed to effectively trap her opponent.
And it will be something that the media absolutely love, and they'll promote it as a massive win. And yet the rest of the viewing public, not all of them, but many of them will find irritating.
The host could hardly contain her laughter when she said the media will promote whatever Kamala Harris comes up with as a massive win for Harris. Whatever happens, it certainly could change the course of the election. We will see. Keep up with all of the news as well as our pre- and post-debate coverage on Newsmax and Newsmax.com. Make sure you're streaming on the new Newsmax Plus for all of your favorite shows, guests, and expert analysis. Rob Schmitt Tonight, Greg Kelly reports, The Record with Greta Van Susteren, Carl Higbie, Bianca De La Garza, John Bachman, Wake Up America, and analysis from political analyst Mark Halpern, Senator Rick Santorum, Governor Huckabee, Carrie Lake, Alan Dershowitz, Judge Napolitano, and many others. NewsmaxPlus.com. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Share it with your friends and family. Please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you may be listening to. Don't forget, you can also listen to the podcast, which I know a lot of you do, on the Newsmax Rumble page as well. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy the debate. See you back here tomorrow for plenty of reaction and analysis. And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Hey, it's Jerry Callahan from The Callahan Show. You can listen to us every day. We react to the latest news, politics, sports, and all the madness in the world. I'll give you my opinion with a little edge, a little attitude. I'm an unapologetic right-winger, trapped behind enemy lines in deep blue Boston, so I'm used to taking on the mainstream media mob. You can hear us anywhere you get your podcast, or you can listen every day at newsmax.com/listen.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to newsmax.com. Start to